We were the Kennedys of our small Connecticut town. Impeccable reputation, sprawling estate, and parents who spearheaded every charity event. But behind the perfectly manicured hedges and the glittering galas, a secret festered, one that would unravel our family's carefully constructed image and shock the entire community. Our house in the affluent town of Greenwich, Connecticut, was the kind that graced the covers of lifestyle magazines. Manicured lawns stretched down to the Long Island Sound. Our Georgian-style mansion stood as a testament to my parents' success, and the air always seemed to hum with a quiet, understated elegance. My parents, Eleanor and Charles Sterling, were pillars of our community. They hosted lavish charity galas, sat on the boards of prestigious institutions, and their names were synonymous with philanthropy and civic duty. I'm Grace Sterling, their only child. Growing up, our life seemed like a carefully orchestrated ballet. Every event was meticulously planned, every interaction polished to a gleaming sheen. My parents instilled in me the importance of appearances, the value of reputation, and the obligation to give back to the community that had so generously rewarded them. Their primary focus, and the cornerstone of their philanthropic endeavors, was the Sterling Family Foundation. It was established years ago with the stated mission of supporting underprivileged children in the tri-state area. The foundation's annual fundraising gala was the social event of the year, drawing in the town's elite and raising millions for various children's charities. My parents were lauded for their generosity, their dedication to the cause seemingly unwavering. My childhood was privileged, filled with private schools, riding lessons, and summer vacations in Europe. Yet beneath the veneer of perfection, I always sensed a certain stiffness, a lack of genuine warmth in our family dynamic. Our interactions felt more like carefully rehearsed lines in a play than the spontaneous expressions of a loving family. My parents were more concerned with maintaining an image than fostering deep emotional connections. As I grew older, I started to question the carefully constructed facade. The sheer volume of my parents' charitable activities sometimes felt performative, almost obsessive. They were always the first to donate, the loudest to applaud, the most eager to have their picture taken with beneficiaries. It was as if their philanthropy was less about genuine compassion and more about solidifying their status in the community. My suspicions began to solidify a few years ago when I was helping my mother organize the foundation's annual gala. I stumbled upon some financial documents that seemed off. There were discrepancies in the reported donations versus the actual funds disbursed. The administrative costs seemed unusually high, and certain expenditures were vaguely labeled. When I cautiously brought it up to my mother, she dismissed my concerns with a tight smile. "Grace, darling, these things are complicated. Trust that your father and I know what we're doing. The foundation is run with the utmost integrity." Her tone brooked no further discussion, and I was left with a nagging feeling that something wasn't right. Over time, I started paying closer attention to the foundation's activities. I volunteered at some of the organizations they supported and tried to get a clearer picture of where the money was actually going. While some of the charities genuinely benefited, I noticed that a significant portion of the funds seemed to disappear into administrative overhead and other nebulous expenses. My unease grew into a gnawing suspicion. Could it be that my parents' much-lauded philanthropy wasn't as altruistic as it appeared? Could the Sterling Family Foundation, the very symbol of their community standing, be built on something less than noble? The annual Sterling Family Foundation Gala was always a spectacle. Held at our estate, the grounds transformed into a glittering wonderland, complete with a celebrity guest, a gourmet meal, and an auction featuring extravagant items. This year's gala was no different, the air buzzing with anticipation and the clinking of champagne glasses. My parents were in their element, gliding through the crowd, their smiles practiced and their handshakes firm. They posed for photographs, accepted accolades, and effortlessly charmed the town's elite. I watched them from a distance, a growing sense of dread settling in my stomach. During the evening, my father took to the stage to deliver his annual speech about the foundation's impact. He spoke eloquently about the importance of giving back, his voice filled with a conviction that had always seemed so genuine. But as I listened, my mind raced back to the financial documents I had seen. the discrepancies I couldn't ignore. Later in the evening, I found myself near my father's study, the door slightly ajar. I overheard a hushed conversation between him and our longtime accountant, Mr. Davies. "Charles, I'm still concerned about these allocations," Mr. Davies said, his voice low and worried. "The IRS is becoming increasingly stringent with these kinds of foundations. We need to be absolutely sure everything is above board." My father's response was sharp, tinged with irritation. "Arthur, we've been over this. Everything is perfectly legal. These are just strategic investments, necessary for the long-term growth of the foundation." "But the percentage allocated to actual charitable programs is unusually low," Mr. Davies persisted. "And these strategic investments, they seem to benefit certain individuals rather directly." My father's voice dropped even lower, and I had to strain to hear. "Arthur, you've been with us for years. You understand the importance of maintaining a certain image. These arrangements are necessary for that." The conversation sent a chill down my spine. Strategic investments? Maintaining a certain image? It sounded less like philanthropy and more like something else. I decided I needed to know the truth, no matter how damaging it might be. I started digging deeper, spending hours reviewing the Foundation's publicly available records online. What I found confirmed my worst fears. A significant portion of the Foundation's funds was being funneled into shell corporations and consulting fees paid to entities with direct ties to my parents. The actual amount reaching the intended beneficiaries was a fraction of what was publicly reported. The charity that my parents had built their reputation on, the very foundation of their esteemed standing in our wealthy town, was a carefully constructed illusion. A sophisticated scheme designed to enhance their own wealth and status under the guise of altruism. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The life I had known, the values I had been taught, felt like a lie. My parents, the pillars of our community, were nothing more than elaborate con artists. The weight of this discovery was immense. I wrestled with what to do. Exposing them would shatter our family, scandalize the town, and potentially have severe legal consequences. But could I stand by and do nothing, complicit in their deception? The following week, my parents announced their plans for the Foundation's annual summer retreat, a weekend getaway for major donors at a luxurious resort in the Hamptons. It was another opportunity for them to bask in the glow of their perceived generosity and further solidify their social standing. I knew I couldn't let them continue this charade. The time had come for the truth to be revealed, no matter the cost. I made a decision. I would go to the retreat, not as their dutiful daughter, but as someone who knew their secret and was prepared to expose it. As we drove to the Hamptons, the familiar tension in the car felt different, heavier. I knew what I was about to do, and the weight of it pressed down on me. My parents chattered about the upcoming weekend, their excitement palpable. I remained silent, my gaze fixed on the passing scenery, the beautiful landscape a stark contrast to the ugly truth I carried within me. The resort was opulent, a sprawling complex overlooking the ocean. The weekend began with the usual round of cocktail parties and networking events. My parents were in their element, effortlessly mingling with the wealthy donors, their smiles bright and their words carefully chosen. I watched them, my heart aching with a mixture of sadness and anger. How could they live such a lie? How could they so easily manipulate the generosity of others for their own gain? The climax of the retreat was the Saturday night fundraising dinner. My father was scheduled to give the keynote speech, a performance I now knew was a carefully crafted piece of deception. As he stood at the podium, the spotlight illuminating his confident smile, I knew my time had come. I took a deep breath and started to walk towards the stage, my heart pounding in my chest. The secret that had been festering beneath the surface of our perfect lives was about to be exposed for all to see. My father was mid-sentence, his voice booming through the ballroom, painting a picture of the Sterling Family Foundation's noble work. He spoke of lives touched, futures brightened, and the profound satisfaction of giving back. The audience, a collection of the town's wealthiest and most influential citizens, nodded in approval, their faces reflecting admiration for the man they believed to be a paragon of philanthropy. I reached the edge of the stage, my presence causing a ripple of confusion through the front rows. My mother, sitting at a prominent table near the stage, saw me first. Her smile faltered, her eyes widening with a dawning horror. She tried to subtly wave me away, a desperate plea in her gaze, but it was too late. I cleared my throat, the sound amplified by the microphone near the podium. My father stopped speaking, turning to me with a look of mild annoyance that quickly morphed into alarm as he saw the determined expression on my face. "Grace, what are you doing?" he asked, his voice tight with forced joviality. "I have something I need to say," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands. The room fell silent, all eyes now on me. My mother stood up, her face pale. "Grace, please, this isn't the time," she began, her voice laced with panic. I ignored her, my gaze fixed on my father. "Dad, you've been talking about the wonderful work of the Sterling Family Foundation, but there's something you haven't mentioned." A nervous cough rippled through the audience. My father's face was now a mask of barely concealed fury. "Grace, this is highly inappropriate. We can talk later." "No, Dad," I said, my voice gaining strength. "We need to talk now. The people here deserve to know the truth." I took a deep breath and looked out at the stunned faces in the ballroom. "The truth is, the Sterling Family Foundation is a fraud." A collective gasp swept through the room. My father's face turned crimson. My mother sank back into her chair, her hand covering her mouth. "Grace, how dare you!" my father roared, his voice shaking with rage. "This is outrageous!" "Is it, Dad?" I replied, my voice calm but firm. "Or is it outrageous that you've been using this foundation as your personal piggy bank, lining your own pockets while pretending to help underprivileged children?" I could feel the shock radiating from the audience. Murmurs broke out, heads turning, whispers spreading like wildfire. "These are lies!" my father shouted, his reputation crumbling before his eyes. "She's hysterical!" "Am I?" I asked, my voice ringing through the suddenly tense ballroom. "I have the financial records. I have the evidence of the shell corporations, the exorbitant consulting fees paid to your cronies. The money that was supposed to go to children in need has been used to fund your lavish lifestyle, your strategic investments that benefit no one but yourselves." I saw Mr. Davies, our accountant, sitting at a table near the front. His face was pale and he avoided my gaze, but I knew he wouldn't deny the truth of my words. The room was in chaos. People were talking amongst themselves, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and outrage. Several individuals started to get up from their tables, their faces etched with anger. My father tried to regain control, his voice trembling. "This is a family matter. It has nothing to do with the foundation." "Oh, but it does, Dad," I countered. "The foundation is your family's legacy, built on a lie. And the people here, the generous donors who believed in your mission, have been deceived." The celebrity guest for the evening, a well-known actress, looked utterly bewildered. Several board members of the foundation were whispering frantically into their phones. The carefully constructed image of the Sterling family was shattering into a million pieces. My mother finally found her voice, her tone laced with desperation. "Grace, please, think about what you're doing. You're destroying everything." "What about what you destroyed, Mom?" I asked, my voice filled with years of unspoken resentment. "The trust? The integrity? The very idea of genuine charity?" I didn't wait for an answer. I turned to the audience, my voice clear and strong. "I apologize for the spectacle, but I couldn't stand by and watch this deception continue. The children this foundation was supposed to help deserve better. This community deserves better." I stepped off the stage, the weight of my confession heavy but liberating. The room was still buzzing with shock and disbelief. My parents stood frozen on the stage, their faces masks of fury and devastation. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The news of my accusations spread like wildfire through Greenwich and beyond. The Sterling Family Foundation was immediately placed under investigation, Donors demanded their money back. The charity galas were canceled. My parents' names, once synonymous with generosity, became associated with scandal and deceit. Our family was torn apart. My parents were furious with me, accusing me of betrayal and destroying their lives. The life of privilege and social standing we had once enjoyed vanished overnight. Our friends and acquaintances distanced themselves, the whispers and judging glances palpable in the small town. I moved out of the mansion, finding a small apartment in a nearby town. It was a far cry from the opulence I had grown up in, but it felt like freedom. I started working at a local nonprofit organization, one that genuinely helped people in need. The work was hard, the pay was low, but it felt meaningful, authentic. The legal proceedings against my parents dragged on for months. The evidence was damning, and eventually they were forced to admit to the misuse of foundation funds. Their reputation was ruined, their social standing irrevocably damaged. The Sterling Family Foundation was dissolved, its assets seized. It was a painful and messy process, one that left deep scars on everyone involved. But amidst the wreckage, something unexpected began to emerge. The community, initially shocked and dismayed, started to rally. New, genuinely altruistic charities sprang up, founded by people who had been disillusioned by the Sterling's deception. A renewed focus on transparency and accountability took hold in the local philanthropic scene. As for me, I found a sense of peace I had never known before. Exposing my parents' secret had been the hardest thing I had ever done, but it was also the right thing. I had chosen truth over appearances, integrity over family loyalty. My relationship with my parents remained fractured. They struggled to accept my actions, viewing me as the agent of their downfall. But I held on to the hope that one day they might understand why I had done what I did. Years passed. Greenwich slowly recovered from the scandal. My parents lived a quieter, more secluded life. Their influence in the community diminished. I continued my work in the nonprofit sector, finding fulfillment in making a real difference in people's lives. Occasionally, I would see news articles about the changes in local philanthropy, the increased scrutiny, and the rise of grassroots organizations. It was a reminder that even from the ashes of deceit, something positive could emerge. One day, I received a letter from my mother. It was the first communication we had had in years. The tone was different, less accusatory, more reflective. She wrote about their regrets, about the mistakes they had made, and about a dawning understanding of my actions. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a start. A small crack in the wall of resentment that had separated us for so long. Life wasn't the fairy tale I had once thought it was. The perfect facade of my upbringing had crumbled to reveal a darker reality. But in its place, I had found my own truth, my own values, and a sense of purpose that was far more meaningful than any social standing or inherited wealth. The secret my parents had guarded so fiercely had ultimately led me to a more authentic and fulfilling life, one where integrity and genuine compassion mattered more than appearances. And in the end, that was a far more valuable inheritance than anything they could have left me.